Aloha and welcome to Hawaii Memories. My name is Shari Tamashiro. Today we're going to be talking to Lily Horio, past president of Jikoen Hongwanji Association. Hi Lily. Thank you for coming by and talking story with me.
You're welcome.
We actually did an interview, in 2011, so 7 years ago when we participated in the StoryCorps project. That was where two people get together for 30 minutes and share stories, and a copy of that goes into the Library of Congress.
I hate to admit it, but I hardly remember it.
Well, I was really struck by your story, and I always wanted to have a longer conversation with you because I think that your story is interesting. And I'm sorry it took me 7 years to get back to you.
Well, what was that on? That story was in relationship to where I was living at Jikoen. Is that the time?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
I see.
Backing up though, your parents names were Shohei and Fumiko Miyasato.
Yeah, yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about them? So they're from Okinawa.
Yes, they're from Okinawa, Motobu. And I guess unlike other immigrants, they met here. I don't know what the circumstances were that they both came on their own.
Oh.
And then, so I was kind of pleased to hear that because that meant that they really liked each other.
They chose each other.
Yeah, they chose each other. But anyway, that's what happened, unlike most of the immigrants.
So they came to Hawaii probably, in the early 1920s?
Yeah, in the early, They were single. And then they met, and then it wasn't like what my friends all had. My story was so different. So.
And the kids that they had, you said it was interesting. It was
boy,
girl,
boy, girl, boy. My mother was so proud of that she kept repeating it whenever she met some new friends. She said, "You want to know about my family?" But Albert, my brother, who is the oldest, is the one that's known most and the rest.
He was also known as Doc Miyasato?
Yeah, after his studies at USC.
Okay. So I guess originally they were in Hilo. That's where Albert was born, Al.
Yeah.
But then they moved to Oahu. And your family doesn't have plantation background.
No. And then they both were not, they met here. So I felt like, I didn't know whether I should feel different or feel I was cheated out of a nice story of immigrants. But this was so different. So
your father had a mom and pop store near Kaheka Street.
King Street, actually.
Oh, King Street.
But Kaheka was, right now is well known, but at that time it was just a lane that went down. And then eventually the Don Quixote built.
That area.
Yeah.
So mom and pop shop is what, like a convenience store?
Yeah, they had everything, shaved ice cream.
Oh.
Seas were very popular, Chinese seas, and magazines, anything. And some miscellaneous
So it sounds like a place kids would like a lot.
Yeah, children came every Friday because they knew the comic books were delivered that time, and they would just sit there and read all the comics, not buy them. But anyway, that's how life was.
So it's almost like a gathering spot for community people.
True.
My auntie would talk about buying a seed, and it would be wrapped in wax paper individually.
Yeah.
And she said they were so poor, she would just take like a bite and then wrap it up again so she could make it last longer.
And then chew the paper afterwards.
Oh, because it absorbed the taste?
Yeah, it absorbed the taste, and so people just chewed it and sucked it.
Did you do that?
Those were the days, I guess I did.
Wow.
But it's really interesting how we adjust to what is lacking, and we make up for it.
Well, I like this idea that to make it last even longer, you're sucking on the paper.
Yeah, you're not going to throw it away. not that nice paper that was wrapped in it with all that wonderful,
Juice.
juice. So it really wasn't juice. It was nice well, what do you call it? Not even gravy. It was
Sorry, crack seed gravy. But you mentioned that your father was really about working with the community, service to the community. I think you said to the point where that was his passion and focus more than business.
Plus he was very religious. He really, cared about his Buddhist choice of, religion. So he pursued that too, but it had something to do with his community work. So that's what I remember him most for. He wasn't a very good businessman.
Because his passion and focus was on the community
because
work.
Instead of selling someone, he would buy from them. He's the one that's supposed to sell.
Because he wanted to help them out?
Yeah. So whenever he went to a home, they would visit homes to sell things in those days. And we come home, what did you sell today, Daddy? He said, oh, I bought this. And that was the,
So it was like so generous or a really big heart that he ended up.
Always, yeah.
So I would say, you could say maybe not a great businessman, but an incredible, compassionate person.
He liked to help people. And that's why I guess we were so involved with the community.
The example that was set for you. I'm curious. So you're growing up in this Kaheka area with your parents running the mom and pop shop. So, you're currently 88 years old. And looking back on that time.
Did you check on that?
I didn't. Should we make you younger?
I'm just teasing you. In fact, I'm proud of being 88.
I think it's great. And you mentioned, right, you're Okinawan. You're planning on living to at least 100, right?
Yeah, at least.
But, I'm curious about what your daily life was like growing up in that area.
This was the Kaheka area or Jikoen?
Kaheka.
Oh, Kaheka was only up to my 5th or 6th grade. And after that, we lived in Jikoen.
Right, but when you were...
life between the two was so different. At the mom and pop store, I had to do a lot of helping around, because my mother watched the store, and my father had a business outside, but not very successful. So while my mother was cooking in the back, they'd have small little windows. I don't know if you remember, you're too young to remember, but most people who had stores lived upstairs. And then they would have a little window, like from the kitchen to the store, so that while mom is busy cooking, she could also keep one eye on the store, because the children had to mind the store.
Oh, okay.
So that was her intention. I remember the window. I don't know why I just keep remembering it. Maybe it was because we were afraid that she could see us when we quietly took that heavy glass door of this big Hershey candy. And my brother Al was the one who taught us all these things. He would tell us, oh, when Mommy's in the kitchen, I'll help you, but be careful about that lid because it's so heavy, glassy. And we would take one or two Hershey.
So you would lift it up really quietly so she couldn't hear it.
So we could have some Hershey. And Hershey was elite candy at that time,
Really?
Yeah. And since then, there have been other chocolates.
Did your mom ever catch you?
No. I don't know if she knew, but kept pretended she didn't. But that was one of our target when she was in the kitchen.
Literally, you are kids in a candy store.
Yeah, we were.
We were
really, yeah.
What else did Al teach you?
A lot of things. Like, my mom, our store was popular for goody sherbet. I don't know if
you... like
goody
the kind on Maui.
Goody was like a sherbet.
It has like condensed milk and it's milky, right?
We used to make it every Monday, the goody. And so Elle would, and that was cheaper, 2 for $5, 2 for nickel. But if you buy the creamy deluxe vanilla ice cream, then you'd have to pay dime. Oh. And so Elle would teach us get the cone and put a lot of goody-goody underneath, and then pack it up with the goody-goody, and then make a very light portion of the vanilla and cover it, and then and then buy it for 10 cents, but you're actually getting a whole cone full of the goody-goody. But anyway, little things like that. He was just that age, because we were the younger. Well, he was the oldest.
So he sounds like a rascal.
Yeah, he really was.
And he taught you all how to be rascals.
Who wasn't, anyway, when they were in, teenager?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what kind of chores did you have to do around?
Oh, well, when I got home from school, we had to mind the store. And then if the magazines were delivered at a particular store, we had to sort them and have the old magazine ready for the distributor, so he could pick that up and give us the brand new one. That was one of the things that I had to do. And of course, clean, sweep the sidewalk in front of the store, and just mind the store while our parents were busy, my mother especially.
I think you talked about having to do laundry too.
Mm-hmm. Oh, in those days, the boys had it really. They didn't do any chores, right? Oh,
Nothing?
I can't remember the laundry, because we had to boil everything. And we had three
This is before laundry machine.
Oh, yeah. And
You were
we
the
used to
laundry
boil,
machine.
Right. And we used to boil the kaki pans.
So you boil, or you have a fire, the water's boiling, that's to kind of get all of the stains
mud,
out.
Yeah, because they were rough wearing. And that's the only kind of pants they wore in those days. Yeah. And they don't think they wore shorts.
So
They
after
wore that
you
long
boil it,
khaki pants. Yeah.
then you have to scrub it using that.
No, the boiling helped remove, a lot of the dirt from the pants. So it wasn't too strenuous at that time when we started boiling. But then my mom wanted to boil the sheets too.
That must have been hard.
Oh, that's really, but then it was nice sleeping on a nice, nice smelling, clean sheet.
Well, that's the thing, is there's no drying machine either, so
No.
everything was hung out
Yeah, we have to
to dry.
hang out. Mm-hmm.
And I was remembering someone talking about how they had to iron back then.
Yeah.
Again, you can't plug it in, so they
Yeah.
used to put
Charcoal,
charcoal into it.
But I hadn't, at that time, I hadn't reached that point.
Age.
Yeah. By then, I was able to have some electricity.
So you guys
Yeah.
didn't need gym memberships, because you're
No,
working out
no,
all the time, yeah?
no. Yeah, when you think about how people have to pay for membership, when you can do it on your own, for free. Really.
Something like that, yeah. So, we talked about you guys eventually moving to Jikoen, Hongwanji.
Mm-hmm.
I sort of grew up Buddhist. My grandparents were, but it's not something that I practice. So what Buddhist group does Jikoen Hongwanji belong to?
Shinshu, Hongwanji. Hongwanji is the leader in Buddhism of Shinshu sect. So founder, so they worship the founder, and so that sect is the largest in
And that's like
Hawaii.
the umbrella that covers. Because what is Hompa Hongwanji?
Shinshu.
That's under that.
Yeah, Shinshu. And so Hompa is the largest and has so many, what do you call that?
Different temples.
They don't have
and
anymore. When I was growing up, there were so many temples that was outreach of Hompa. Instead of, people couldn't travel so easily as they do now, they're being dropped off by car and so forth. So that Hompa Hongwanji had several little, smaller temples. There was one in Kaimuki, and one in Kalihi.
So all the different areas.
Eventually, Jikoen became independent, catering mostly to the Okinawans.
So in June of 1941, the Reverend at Jikoen is not married, so he invites your family to move in as caretakers.
Right.
So the mom and pop shop closes,
Yeah.
and your whole family moves. But in the first location, which was on Hoftailing Street.
Yeah, daily.
And You know,
that's why I don't know this new temple now. I was away. I was an adult. I had graduated university, so I was away most of the time. So my memories are mostly on updating. After people had their fundraiser and they built a beautiful temple now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's a
So I
different,
cannot
not
take
of your
credit.
memories.
Yeah, I can't take credit for having help on that fundraiser.
But you know, Jikoen is often called the Okinawan temple because, say it's unique because it was started not to serve, a particular area like Mo'iliili or Mililani, but it was to serve the needs of the Okinawan people in Hawaii. The story that Okinawans came over much later than the Japanese and experienced discrimination. And I think you mentioned when you were a child, you experienced discrimination being Okinawan. Can you tell us about that?
As a child, nothing against the religion or anything, but when people knew that I was Okinawan, they would quietly tell each other, "Oh, she's a big rope, you know."
She's a what?
You never heard of that?
No.
She's a big rope. English.
Big rope.
Translate big rope. How do you translate big? Do you know Japanese?
No. Like oki. Oki.
And then rope is nawa.
Oh, okay.
Nawa in Japanese
Sure.
is Okinawa. So that's a magic word that people use, just
So instead of saying she's Okinawan, they would say
just
she's
say,
a big rope.
Yeah.
Oh.
So I'm surprised that a lot of people that I had interviews with had never heard that.
I heard about when they would say Okinawa buta ken ken.
Yeah.
That
was very common because a lot of them had big farms, and they went from house to house to collect all the slop from the families, which was a big help to them because they didn't need to buy food.
But
Yeah.
Okinawans
So
were
they
looked down on
made-
because of that.
Yeah, and then they made a habit of making the rounds, and which I grew up that way, so it
It's
wasn't
normal,
anything
right?
new. Yeah, it was normal for me.
But so big rope was just a different way of identifying. But
Yeah,
was it
it-
derogatory?
Was it what?
Derogatory, like
Oh,
negative?
In a way, if people knew what the translation was.
And I guess they're saying, if they're whispering, oh, she's a big rope, she's
Yeah.
Okinawan.
Yeah.
They're kind of ostracizing or...
Yeah, because their parents came from, the word was Naichi. Naichi is the main island, yeah? And so if you're not Naichi, then you must be poor class,
And that would be Okinawa and like the Ainu people
Yeah, well,
in
we
Japan.
didn't have too many Ainu.
Sure.
Yeah, so Okinawans went through a lot if they were about my age. But people younger don't remember.
I think what surprises me is hearing about how if a Japanese person wanted to marry an Okinawan, that was frowned on.
Oh, of
To the
course.
point that
Yeah.
families, had rifts.
No, yeah. It was really at one time. If you're Naichi, you have to stick to your own people. And Okinawan wasn't considered our,
Of
I
our
don't know
people.
how to yell. But anyway, we went through that.
And, it has changed so much today where there's
Oh, yeah.
people wear their Okinawan identity with so
Oh,
much
I know,
pride
yeah.
and it's hard to imagine.
I know. And
how
the
things
young
were back
people,
then.
Yeah. But I don't know how it turned that way because for a while it could be the generation, the newer generation, because they liked the music, for one thing. And so that became very popular among Okinawa to the bone dance. They
Yeah.
liked the Okinawan music more than the
Because
Naichi.
Okinawan music is very lively and
Yeah,
energetic.
Yeah, very rhythmic too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I was doing research about Jikoen. And so they were saying when Jodo Shinshu was first introduced to Hawaii, it was actually Japanese temples that were organized and controlled by Issei, first generation. And so when Okinawans came over years later, Okinawa doesn't have Buddhism very strongly established. Theirs is more like ancestor worship. and a lot of their own traditions, language, and the way of living. And so when they experienced discrimination and ostracism, like we were saying, I guess Okinawans kind of kept to themselves. And, you know, it was Reverend Yosemori. What's his first name?
Chido.
Chido.
C-H-I.
So he was from Okinawa. He was Okinawan.
Yeah.
But he actually became ordained as a minister.
Yeah, he was a pharmacist. It's interesting, his background. But then I don't know how he, you know, I guess he had enough friends to convince him.
But he was the one that saw a need in the community, you know, to support these isolated immigrants or these groups. And, you know, I guess I was reading that he started holding small services for people in private homes, or just doing it on a really small scale with the dream of eventually having a full temple. But one of the things I've always heard is that, like, when Okinawans went to some of the temples, they weren't always welcomed as much as they would have. They felt uncomfortable. Maybe that's a better way to put it.
Yeah.
And that's why the idea was that they would have their own temple,
Yeah.
which would be Jikoen.
Because at one time I had heard that the bishop there purposely assigned him to the main temple, hoping that the Okinawan people would follow him and jump, but they never did, because they never felt comfortable.
I see.
That's why, yeah.
And, you know, like, when we say that, it's rooted in just that, the discrimination that they were feeling at the hands of Japanese who didn't feel they were on the same level.
Right, right.
Because I've heard a lot of Okinawans, you know, Nisei generation, talk about feeling like a second-class citizen or being treated like...
Yeah, well, when you look at history, I mean, you know, and study it as a scholar, you can understand, because Okinawans came way later. And then their culture was so different. So, you know, I can understand.
And they did things like raise pigs.
Yeah.
And eat pigs. But, you know, I think that in 1938, they dedicated Jikoen Hongwanji on Hoftailing Street. And it's unusual in the name. Like we said, it's not Mo'ili Ili Hongwanji or Mililani Hongwanji. Jikoen translates into...
Ji is spiritual. Jiko is a bright light. Jiko, and Eng is a place, park.
So a place of bright light.
Yeah, bright light, yeah.
And you had members that were coming in from all over the island because it was the Okinawan community doing that.
Other temples were built by geographically.
And you would join. So, you know, in 1941, Reverend Yosemori goes to Japan and gets stuck there because of tensions rising in the lead up to World War II. And Reverend Yamasato becomes the resident minister, and that's when your family moves in to help him. You know, what I was really, you talked about life before you moved to Jikoen. How did it change when your family was now living at a temple?
Because my mother became, well, my family, we became the provider for them, the ministers, for the meals and almost everything, because Reverend Yamasato was not married. And that was one reason why he asked my parents to move, so that he could have a family, you know. And so we had our meals together. And during the war, we were really, before he became interned, we were really always, during blackout, we were together in the living room.
Spending a lot of time together.
Playing cards. And I don't know, as a child, I guess children remember things that's insignificant to adults. I'll never forget the mirror that was in behind Reverend Yamasato. And we taught him how to play cards, you know, because we had nothing else to do but to blacken our windows, and so we played cards. But we had him sit in front of the mirror so that the rest of us, could read his cards. And that went on and for the longest time, he never understood why he was always losing. And I'll never forget. It's funny how you just remember certain things. that never got erased out of my mind. But
That was so naughty.
Yeah, we were naughty, and we just didn't tell him that we know what you got it like. But that's how life was during the war, until he
Under
was
martial law.
until he was also.
Because you
yeah.
moved to Jikoen 6 months before Pearl Harbor
Yeah.
is attacked. And
June 1941, yeah.
so when Pearl Harbor is attacked, all of the Buddhist priests were rounded up and taken away. You know, it's interesting, they weren't sent to internment camps. They were sent to what were called Department of Justice camps.
Oh, that I
And
didn't
so
know.
most of them were in New Mexico.
Oh.
And they actually were under the Geneva Convention.
Oh.
And it's fascinating because you have all these educated people together. They actually knew their rights under the Geneva Convention, and they demanded it.
Oh, really?
And
that I didn't
some
know.
people say that their treatment was better than
Oh, really?
some of the internment camps because they knew their rights.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, you know, we're almost out of time. We will talk again about how your family kept Jikoen running during the war, and basically your experiences during that time and afterwards. I just think that, you know, we were saying in our conversation, you were in such an interesting place because Jikoen was a gathering place for the Okinawan community. It was a place everyone went to. And your family was the one that kept it going during the war because it was something that was so needed. And I really want to thank you for coming to Talk Story because your memories
Yeah.
are just something that, like you said, we don't know these stories
yeah,
and
that's
details
true.
anymore.
But I was worried because my memory is getting really, really.
I think you're doing a great job.
Oh, yes. But really, no, really, there was so much that other people, the new generation, should know. Yeah.
So thank you so
Yeah, you're
much, and
welcome.
we will talk again next episode.